This presentation is on the GIMP rules add-in gra005. This add-in builds the code architecture for three events. The GIMP rules procedure on empty data set, where you go into a table, let's say the sample table, and you go to B1 and it has no data. That triggers this onEmpty data set event. You can write code that would pre-populate that data set. More importantly, the GIMP rules procedure on save, where you can insert code that would validate the data and do any calculations or data manipulations that you wish. Those have been around since gra005 first came out a number of years ago. We have recently added a third processing option, and that is for setting up the code architecture to import data into GIMP. And this presentation is on that option. So this is the first of four presentations. And in this introduction, we're going to go through a general overview of concepts and benefits and the process of how the tool works. And then we're going to perform the initial setup. And in three remaining presentations, we're going to use the tool to set up the code architecture to import text files directly into the database, meaning that we're going to set it up so that it goes directly to the tables and fields that are in the current database structure, as opposed to going to a generic structure and then you have to write a correspondence file for. And the third presentation is doing the same thing with Excel file import. And the fourth is this map text file import, where you don't know the final structure of the database that you're importing into. So you write your data to a structure that with your own table and field names, not knowing where it's going, and then the user would have to write a correspondence file to do the mapping. So the direct file import mimics the gra001 project that we have on our website. Actually, it was actually rewritten using this new tool. Same with gra009, which imports CIV data from an Excel file. gra001 imports CPT information. And then gra011 imports Texas DOT WinCore files. And there we don't know what the final database structure is. So it creates an intermediate generic structure. And then you would need to write a correspondence file to do the mapping to your own database structure. Let's go an overview. GIMP can natively read a number of formats for import. Two most common are GIMP CSV. We follow the same rules as the Excel CSV format, which CSV is comma separated values. And CSV basically describes the way the data fields and records are formatted, and we do follow the same rules as Excel. The GIMP version of the CSV breaks up the file into multiple tables of data, and you start each table with a star, or asterisk, table name, whatever your table name is, and then the field name list, and then the data, as many lines as you wish. And you can have as many of these tables as you wish in a file. GIMP can also natively read Excel if the worksheet name is a table name, and the first non-blank line in each worksheet is the field list, and then below that field list are your data. And we can also import from AGS format, data interchange format, commonly used in the UK and many other countries. It was developed in the UK. Microsoft Access and Rockware logplot format. Now, these three formats do not need pre-processing. What this rule is for files that GIMP can't natively read. If the files are set up in a format that conforms to the AGS or its Access or conforms to the logplot format, GIMP can read it. then just need to write a correspondence file. So you don't need to write any code. So 005 import add-in option deals with text and Excel files whose native structure GINT cannot read. So this option sets up the code architecture so that you can read these files, extract their data, and then put them into an intermediate temporary GINT CSV file. It then writes a script that performs the import and then deletes all the temporary files it's created in the process. The basic concept is that the code you write with this tool will convert your source file or files into a temporary GINT CSV file and then write a script. Diagrammatically, that's what it looks like. You've got your source file or files. Your code will convert to a GINT CSV structure, putting multiple files of data into one GINT CSV. It will write a script, temporary script, which will then get executed, and then it comes into the program. And the benefits are many. This tool will prompt you for questions about the configuration of your source files and the target structure you're writing to. And it writes all the generic, basically the architectural code. And this frees you up to concentrate on the code that's specific to your source file structure. All you're doing, your only task here, is just to read that data and then write it to a file format that GINT can read. And the code architecture does a lot of the groundwork for you. And it also, we provide a number of pre-made procedures that can help you with data manipulation and other tasks. So let's go through the process. So when you run this tool, you click on the add-ins menu, and you will see this. And here are the three different code architectures we can set up for you. We are dealing with this import add-in. There's another video describing the procedure on save for your data validation and calculations. So we pick the import add-in option, and the first thing you see is this message box. And it tells you what it's going to do, and exactly what we described earlier. And it gives you the opportunity to cancel, and you need to cancel. Later on, it's going to ask you what the target structure is. If the target structure is the current database, then you better have a database open that is the structure you want. And if you don't, cancel. If the target structure is a GINT CSV formatted file, which we'll discuss later, then that better be made. If it isn't, cancel, make it, and start it again. The procedure information dialog is common to all three options within gra005. You put in your procedure name, who wrote it, and a description. And all that can be changed once the code is finally generated. The next thing it wants to know is, what is your target? Use the current project or use a GINT CSV file. You would use this CSV option if you don't know what the target structure is. You're going to be making an intermediate structure, and then the user will have to make a correspondence file. And in that case, you need to prompt for an import correspondence file. And this last question here, if you're importing to enterprise database, the way it works when this tool works, it checks which project you're on in the enterprise database, and that's what you're importing into. This checkbox says, if I'm not on any project, and that can happen when you're in the project table in SQL Server database on the empty line, then you're not in any project. There's no project current. If you're in any table besides project, you're always in a specific project. But in the project table, you could be on that empty line. And what that says is I want to import into a new SQL Server database. SQL Server project. So do we want to allow it or not? And I'll show you cases where we do want to and do not want to. Then it asks for the source file description. So there you would type something like Excel files or sieve analysis files or whatever kind of files you have. Just this will show up in the open file dialog when the user finally executes your code. And then what file extension or extensions could these files have? And you type it like it's shown here. No dots, no stars, just CSV, TXT, DAT, whatever they are. And the first one that is specified is the default. For example, if you're doing Excel files, you might want to put XLS, XLSX, would be a more recent format. If your files are always stored in the same place, you can put the initial search folder here. That will save the user the trouble of navigating to that folder each time. If it could be anywhere, then just leave that blank. And then, do you want to allow the user to pick more than one file at a time when they're doing the import? Just check that box for multi-select. If you've said that the target structure is the current project open in input, you will then get a dialog like this, which shows you all the tables in the database. And you select the table or tables that you're going to be importing into. It shows you the table names, and if it has a caption, it shows you the caption in brackets. Once you've selected the tables, it then brings up one of these dialogs, which shows a field list for every table you've selected. And you select the tables that, the fields that you're going to be importing into. If you had said that the target structure is a CSV file, a pre-made structure you've created, then all it does is ask you for the name of that file. You select that file. So once you've gone through all those steps, all those dialogues, the program writes the code skeleton, and it's stored in the Windows clipboard. And then you paste it into the appropriate module, and then you write the source file specific parsing and writing code, the code that reads the data from those source files and then writes to this temporary Git CSV file. That's the real work. The tool handles everything else. And the last step, once you've got your code written, you need to add a new add-in menu. So this will show up in the add-ins menu next to Git rules, and then the user can pick what your tool. You put in your command label. If you want, you can put an ampersand there next to any letter, and that will be the shortcut key, the hotkey. You can put it under a submenu or not. This is the gra001, obviously, add-in definition. You can have as many add-ins as you wish. You tell it which application you can run it from. There are only two applications currently you can run add-ins from: input and data design, library data. And finally, you pick your code, the module, and the procedure that needs to run when they click on this menu item. And then finally, whether you want to require a save before this is your add-in is run. And in this case, with add-ins, yes, you do want to require a save. That's the entire process once we get this all set up. Now we're going to talk about setup, and we're going to do that in Git itself. All right, we've got any old project open. We're not going to use that right now. And we've got a library that has absolutely no Git rules in it. So if you've already got Git rules set up, you can tune out for a while. We're going to show you how, if you've never done a Git rule, if you don't have any Git rules in your library, how to get started. Now, there are a couple of ways. We do need some basic things. And you do this once, and then you can basically forget about it. It's already been set up. And you can find how to do that in one of two ways. One, you can go under Manuals and Get Rules Code, PDF file, and then do a find on the basic process. It sets up the architecture. Let me press Control, click on that, and here we are. And this will take you through. You're going to be creating two modules and then pasting in some code, and that's all laid out for you here. You just copy and paste, and there's a bunch more here. So that's one way to do it, and I do recommend reading this section. I'm going to take you through a much faster way, but you're going to lose all of the background information about what all this stuff means. I don't want to take time in this presentation to do that. It's all in the documentation. All right, so I'm going to take you through the lazy way. I'm going to go to Utilities, Live Merge Copy, and I'm going to merge from GR, not GRA, GR001. It's on our website. Feel free to download it. You could have done it from a number of them. This is convenient. And what we want are the Get Rules modules. And that's it, the Get Rules modules. There are 3 modules, and we just want these 2. This is for a very special purpose. This will do it for our purpose right now. And we're done. Let's go back to Input. And we're going to Get Rules, Get Rules Code, and there they are. So all we're going to do is rename these. Delete that. And go into this. And there's a lot of stuff here. Actually, none of what's in here, we don't need any of it, number of procedures, for the import. But it's useful and actually required. This section up top is used a lot in Get Rules procedures on save and add-ins. I'm sorry, the pre-population. But it doesn't hurt to have this here. And these are some useful routines you may want to use in your own code, and recommend going through this and read the description. All right, so we don't have to do anything here. We just need to have a Common Procedures module. And then we're going to rename this one add-ins. And this is going to be GRA. You would not name it this, just to give you this, import add-in examples. Now, in terms of what modules you would have, you could have just one module, put all of your code in there. But from an organizational standpoint, we recommend having a Common Procedures modules. These are procedures that are called from other main modules and that are used across different modules, and sort of background tools. And then we recommend at least a module for major kinds of code. Add-ins is one category. What we call table procedures, procedures for pre-population and save and after save, for example. You may want to break it down finer. You may want to have one module just for save procedures, another one for pre-population, another one for after save. You may have different types of add-ins. You may have add-ins that manipulates the data in the database. You have another set that does imports, another one does exports, whatever. But making it more granular makes it a lot easier to work with. Okay, now for those of you that already, I'm sorry, we have not finished changing this one. We need to do some work. And it's giving us an error. I'll explain that in a moment. This live include is what's called a meta command. This ties these two modules together. When code is run from this now called add-ins module, it will bring in the code from this module as well. Now we've renamed it. All we have to do is get rid of that. Now that will work just fine. This is what we really need it for, this one chunk of code. And all VBA and VBA-like programming macro compilers all code flow always goes through something called public submain. You will find this in Access, in Excel, in Word, etc. We have to have a submain. And our submain does a lot of setup for you. And again, recommend reading that documentation to get more understanding. But we do need this. The rest we're going to get rid of. This is specifically for GR001. I'm just going to highlight it and delete it. That's all we need. Save it. And now we have the basic code architecture. Now for those that have already got something like this set up, you could just stay with what you've got, and the procedures we're going to be generating you can paste into one of your main module procedures. If you want, if you don't have one, you may want to create an add-ins procedure. All you have to do is go into one of your other main module procedures and just highlight this part, go back into your new add-ins module and paste this in. All right. Now we're all on the same page, people that have never had any Git rules and people that already have them. The next thing we want to do is bring in gra005. That's not strictly necessary. We could just switch libraries to gra005, run the tool, generate the code, and then come back to this library and paste it in. But there are some procedures that we need to grab from gra005 first and paste them into our common procedures. Further, if you're going to be doing this more than once, you probably don't want to be switching back and forth between libraries. So just have it in your library permanently. So let's go into Utilities, and we're going to merge instead from gra005. And we're going to bring in the add-ins and the Git rules modules. Here are the three add-in menu items, and then we've got 3 modules we're bringing in. And we're done. Now we've got all these things. So, mainly now we're going to talk about this. This module is not actually used by gra005. It contains some definitions, some declarations, and a number of procedures. Some of these procedures are required to run the import add-in because the code architecture that is set up references some of these procedures. So they have to be in your common procedures. Now, we could have written the gra005 import option to just bring that code in directly, but that would populate your main module with procedures that could be used across modules. So we decided to just ship them, and then you copy and paste them into your common procedures. Now, which ones do you need? Of course, you can take them all. It does no harm. But one thing, please read this before you really get working. With the gra005 files comes a text file. All of our Git rules have a text file describing what it does and some details about it. This first section explains all the dialogues for the empty data set and save options, and for the import add-ins, exactly what we showed you, but in words and not just in pictures. And the revision history, and then what's included. We have the add-ins, the main module procedures, the common procedures. These two are needed to run the tool. These are the ones that you want to take. Which ones? It's explained, as this note says, it's explained down below. This group is needed by the import tool itself. These procedures are referenced, so that if you don't have them in your common procedures module, or whatever you're calling it, then it won't run. So those for sure you have to have. And then these are very useful for breaking apart lines of data and putting them back together again in certain ways. So this can help you on your reading and writing code. And we're going to be making use of that in some of the examples we're going to show in the other presentations. And then we have some other procedures that would be useful for you. All right, we're just going to take everything. So we're going to take it in two swipes. We're going to take the declaration section first, go to common procedures, and put them in the declaration section here. Now, this here is used in a number of our sample rules on our website. It's used for determining a unique file name. So you may already have this. So just delete it if you find it there already. These are needed in some of the procedures, other procedures that we're bringing in. We'll save that. Go back. Now we're going to grab all the procedures. So go to the end, copy it. If you want to selectively grab certain ones, that's fine. But it doesn't hurt to have them there. Back to common procedures, go to the end. The only potential problem you're going to have is that some of those procedures are already there, like this unique file name. Again, that's used in a number of projects that we've posted. It won't actually say anything until you move back to the add-ins, and this is called. Then an error would be thrown. To show you how that works, I'm going to duplicate this last procedure, just so you know. Yes, we'll save that. And now when we go back in, it's going to yell at you, or it would yell at you when you tried to run your code. And what it's saying is that this identifier, unique file name, FNS, is already in use. So if you do inadvertently bring in redundant information, redundant procedures, you will be informed. So let me get rid of this. Save that. And now we can get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. One more setup item. If you look under add-ins, now we have GRA exactly as showed in the PowerPoint. But if you're going to keep this permanently, gra005 doesn't mean anything to most people. So what I recommend, go into Get Rules, Add-ins Manager, and change the submenu name. We'll call Code Skeleton Generator. How's that? And we'll just copy that down. This unique name is actually not used by GINT except when you're doing a merge. It will show you these names. Also, it affects the order of the menu item. So if you wanted to, you could keep the full name if you want, and you could put something like 1- to ensure that is in the first position. And you can change your numbers to reorder them any way you want. I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay. And now, if we go under add-ins, it's something a little more user-friendly to explain what it does. All right. And you can change these as well. That's also in the add-ins manager. That's here. So you can change them if you wish. That is a setup. This is done once, and then you can write thousands of rules after that, thousands of import utilities and procedures on save and procedures on empty data set. So just to recap, what we did is we set up the basic structure that we need for any Git rules. modules. We have a main module procedure and a common procedures. You can get that by merging in gra001 and stripping off things that we don't need and renaming, or strongly recommend you read the documentation on the basic process in the Get Rules manual. Then we merged in gra005, moved all the declarations and the procedures from the auxiliary module into the common procedures module. And then the last thing we did was, for cosmetic purposes, for readability really, we just renamed the submenu here. That's the whole process. And I strongly recommend now you move on to the other presentations where we'll actually create code that will do import under 3 different conditions. Thank you.